Well, hello and welcome. Hello, Renee. So glad
Hi
you're
there.
here today. Yes, Renee Rayles is in the house. She is here to share some things. And like I was just sharing before we hit record today, I've been following you for a little bit, and I admire who you are, your energy, your just everything you're bringing to the space of diabetes and beyond. Really, I think you have a really nice way of just bringing your life and your everyday into alongside managing this disease, which is something somewhat new for you. So tell us a little bit about how this began and your diagnosis story.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Melissa. And I love all the things that you are doing. For me personally, so probably about 10 years ago, I worked as a pharmaceutical and a medical device rep. I actually sold one of the first continuous glucose monitors, and I was not diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at that time. And at that time, it seemed like the training we had to do was so much. Little did I know that that training would come in handy later in life. I mean, part of this training included training with diabetes educators from the American Diabetes Association in Kansas
Mm-hmm.
for 4 days, reading Think Like a Pancreas. And all of those things helped when I was getting ready to get misdiagnosed with type 2 diabetes due to
Mm.
my age, even though I had late onset type 1.
Yeah, that's incredible. So it's amazing how things, and this is something I don't think I've ever mentioned here on the show, but I was diagnosed at 14 and back in 1982, a long time ago. Diabetes wasn't even in the news back then. We didn't have internet, right? It was a little harder to find out things. But I remember having, I don't know if it was a daydream or some sort of a dream I had that I was gonna get diabetes. It's a little, I
Whoa.
know, and I think I've told my mom about it later on. It was just that it was this suddenly this disease became present for me. Bizarre. And
I've never heard anything like that. I'm so happy you
yeah,
shared that because
yeah.
that's wow.
And I think maybe it's a mindset, it's kind of a thinking, I don't even know what to call it. It's kind of a readiness, just making it aware. Because again, diabetes wasn't even, I was in school, I was in junior high. We didn't walk around talking about disease, but for some reason, it became apparent to me about this disease. And then, sure enough, not too long ago, I was actually diagnosed with it. So it's a little freaky. Think about that.
That's
Yeah.
such a wild story.
Yeah, goes to show you that yeah, there are ways that life does prepare us for what's to come, and that's just a good example of it. Yeah.
May I ask then, so when you had that dream and you were 14, did you then, tell your parents, or did you just
At the time, no. I don't think we know how relative it is until the light is kind of shined on it, because I just thought it was odd, whatever that thought was. It might have been
hindsight's
something.
2020?
I know, right? Yeah, it's just kind of crazy. But so with this extensive training, it obviously helped for you to even almost help to diagnose yourself, or at least to steer the doctors into a different path as to what they originally thought. Based on your age and probably your current health, because there's a stigma around type 2, those with type 2 diabetes, and you didn't fit that realm. So there was a little bit of diagnosis, misinformation, confusion, all of that.
I will say that I had been going to the doctor for probably over a year. I'd had a lot of things that were going on and I couldn't figure it out what it was. So, for example, I'd been to two different allergists because I was losing and putting on weight very
Mm,
quickly, like overnight, 5 and 10 pounds. And I had an allergist say that that's not physically possible. Yes, it is when undiagnosed.
yeah.
Diabetes in general, I still at this point hadn't put two and two together. Also, even during my training, we really talked about, you didn't talk about a lot of late onset until probably most likely the past couple of years. I've really started to see it more in the news. I'd been to the dentist. I had this taste in my mouth, a fruity taste in my
Mm,
mouth I couldn't get rid of.
mm,
And yeah,
mhm.
and I told the dentist that even when I brush my teeth, I can't get rid of this taste. And he
Mm,
said, generally, that's from people that don't brush their teeth. Well, I just told you I brush my teeth and I have it. Additionally, you can
Right.
see my charts and know that I don't have a mouthful of cavities.
Right.
And
Right.
I kept having these like things that were going on. And then I had during COVID, I could see my test results from my cardiologist. And I noticed on there when I was online for my online exam that my blood sugar was high. And I'm like, that's not right. And thankfully, I saw that and knew that from my previous training.
Hmm.
And I scheduled an appointment with my primary care doctor. Now, during that time, I was progressively getting more sick.
Mm.
And then that's when the thirst started, where I was drinking probably two humongous unsweet teas, like within a 3 hour time period every
Yeah.
day, or water. And I starting putting these things together. So when the doctor called me to give me my results back from my physical, he said everything came back except your blood sugar was high. And he said, we'll just retest in a year. And so then that's when I told him that my blood sugar was high on this other thing. And he said, you know what? Come in and get your A1C drawn. And I said, hey, is there any chance I could have type 1 diabetes? And he chuckled and he said, no, we'd be looking for type 2. So when I went in to get my A1C drawn, your average 90-day blood glucose, the doctor didn't come back. So I asked the nurse, I'm like, is there any chance I could talk to the doctor just briefly?
Mm.
So he comes back and I said, listen, I know I'm not a doctor, but we just did a full physical on me and I don't have the comorbidities that generally accompany type 2. I don't have high lipids, I don't have high cholesterol, I'm not overweight, and I don't have high blood pressure. Could we do a C-peptide test, which is the
Mm.
measurement of how much insulin your
Hmm.
pancreas is making? Again,
Absolutely.
all because of my previous training.
Hmm.
And he sat there and looked at me and said, you know what? That makes sense. And I'm so thankful that he listened to me as well. And again, this is all because of my previous training. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm so transparent with my story is
Hmm.
because my knowledge is what helped me get the right diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a great point because talking to the doctor, we have that white coat syndrome. They know best. If it was something that it should be, and again, C-peptide is not something that the average person knows. Many of us in the diabetes space are aware with that test, and it will tell the story. Again, I'm such an advocate of level checking, with all different types of things with our health, because numbers don't lie, and it does definitely tell us the story. You it's an example too of advocating because you were one of the lucky ones. So what advice would you give for somebody, hopefully, well, there might be somebody today listening, or maybe somebody today listening knows of somebody that is having kind of this back and forth diagnosis. I know we do have some people in the type 2 space listening here. I actually had a guest on last year, Bernita, who went through a very similar, hers was much more drawn out. She was, the diagnosis termed as LADA, which is a late adult onset diabetes. Um, and I think, and in your case, it wasn't LADA. Maybe you went through that honeymoon stage. Again, there's another term that we hear where your body, so like your C peptide, did it show a little bit of functioning going on with your pancreas?
So it's interesting. I went to a physician's expo endocrinologist, and they said it's not that your pancreas actually stops generally making all insulin. It doesn't make enough insulin for it to actually work. So that
Mm,
was really interesting
interesting.
to me. Yeah, he was like, I hear a lot of times people say my pancreas is broken. And again, I'm not a physician. This was just something
Hmm.
I went to, and I was like, huh, interesting. So I did have a very small honeymoon phase after I was diagnosed, but it was very, very short, and I missed uh, the new medication that's out that can help delay type 1 if you know that you have the
Oh,
auto antibodies, which I was
right.
already past that point, but I missed that by 8 months. And it's something that I would like to talk about a lot because there is something you can do about it now,
Right,
which
right,
a lot of people be like, why would I test? And now, there's even more reason to. But I
right,
think
right.
you were asking about what would I say to people that
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what kind of, I'm just, and that's how I work as a coach. I try to equip, these conversations that that patients can have around, whether it's different types of therapy or maybe trying a different insulin or even different types of pumps. It's just a conversation, because I don't think in general we feel like we have enough say in the game, or that we know enough to even insist or request certain things. But this is obviously on a different level, because this is actually a diagnosis that obviously is going to affect your life, and then what your future is going to be, living with diabetes. But I just think advocating and just getting the word out. We're very lucky to live in a space right now where, well, in some cases we may have too much information, but we can't say that there's not other places to kind of search, right?
Certainly. And, to talk specifically about women's health, I know many women, after they get to a certain age, a lot of things are just blamed on, well, it's probably perimenopause. It's probably menopausal. I've met a lot of women throughout my past few years that have been misdiagnosed and kind of put under the umbrella of, some of those things are, they're probably something else. And
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
not feeling like they're being taken serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to a lot of women on my live sessions. And I've heard so many people that have been misdiagnosed for 6 and 7 years. And you are
Mm.
very ill if you are
Mm-hmm.
diagnosed 6 to 7 years later. You're
Yeah.
not getting your life-saving insulin immediately as you need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a couple of things that I would say is to arm yourself with knowledge, in the sense that when you come in with something, make notes, have notes ready to ask that doctor. If you have a hard time, because I know a lot of people do have the white coat syndrome, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
they get nervous or anxious in there, bring somebody with you that doesn't mind
Mm-hmm.
asking those questions. And then thirdly, if you don't feel like you're being heard, go to another doctor. I have no problem personally going to another doctor if I don't feel heard. The
Absolutely.
reason why I go back to that primary care doctor is because he listened to me. And I also know that this is a general thing that happens in a lot of doctors. I know they're trying to change this with
Mm-hmm.
primary care, not automatically assuming type 2 diabetes, but he listened to me and he got the test. And that meant so much to me because, you felt heard. I know that I'm not a physician, but something doesn't add up. And I
Yeah.
think one of the other things that women have, and I'm speaking because I am a woman, is that a lot of us have gut intuition, and to
Mm-hmm.
follow that gut intuition, because I can tell you that gut has never led me astray. And I knew something was wrong with me. I kept
Mm-hmm.
going to different specialists. And, I know a lot of people get exhausted with that. But the thing is, you're never going to find out if you don't keep going. And if you don't feel well, life and the quality of life, it's not so much fun. And
Absolutely.
so I would just
Yeah.
encourage anyone that's still struggling with finding out what's going on with them, perhaps go to another doctor and
Mm-hmm.
get that second or third or fourth opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowledge is power for sure. And I think this is what we're doing in our space as well. Women come together. And not only do we talk about it a lot, I talk with a lot of women here on the show, but get with friends, get with another woman. We talk hormones here a lot too, perimenopause through menopause. It's a lot of adjustment and a lot of questions. The doctors don't tend to really know how to answer these questions, and that's something that we try to do here as well. So yeah, you just kind of tipped on that. Yeah, it's lean on all of us that can help and support, and a lot of us have been through it as well. So yeah.
And you mentioned, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, oh, that's okay. Yeah, and just using your example, your life experience with this, I just think it's amazing that somebody, I think back to, I hid my diabetes when I was a kid. That was, again, it was a lot of shame. I didn't really understand the disease. And it's amazing when you fast forward, because I'm 42, a little over 42 years now. It's incredible how it can turn. And I see this is what's happening with you, because you've definitely turned a diagnosis. I call it a pain, is something that we have to struggle through, into a purpose, just to reach and, to help other people's journeys through it.
That's a
Yeah.
great way to say it, a pain into a purpose. I'm saying that out
Mm-hmm.
loud because I want to remember that,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
that's a great quote.
Yeah, you can take it. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's life. Hopefully we can learn and we can grow. And it's an opportunity to give back and to share our experiences. And I think during the process, and maybe you can share your process. So you've been diagnosed, what, 3 or 4 years? And
3 years in this past May.
okay. Wow, so new. So what was it like? I mean, that's a loaded question. I mean, did you feel supported with your medical staff as far as what type of, whether I'm assuming you're on an insulin pump, CGMs, all this stuff. You knew somewhat a bit about it because you were in the industry. So what were your days and weeks following that diagnosis like?
So I worked in the diabetes industry for 7 years. For almost every single day, I talked about diabetes. So I was very well aware that,
Mhm.
especially with type 1, that you had to act on it quickly. You don't have time to be able to catch your mental and your mind and your soul up to speed. You have to immediately get on that. And I knew that coming into it. So I feel like knowing the seriousness of it, but also I had been so sick for so long that when I
Mm,
went on insulin, I had felt so good. I remember telling someone before I was diagnosed, I felt like I was dying on the inside, and I was. I didn't know
mhm,
that, but I was.
mhm,
And I felt so good that it helped propel me to continue to stay within um, uh, not giving up, because I
mhm.
know that it's very easy to do, but I just felt so amazing. Additionally, with that, since I was in the industry for many years, I knew some of the best doctors in the world. I'd been to many different
Mm,
programs. The endocrinologist, I already knew who I wanted to go to. He's one of the best in the world. And I was very lucky in that way. But also, I also had friends in the industry that were diabetes educators when I was reaching out to them before I got my diagnosis about do I have type 1 diabetes? Could I have type 1 diabetes at my age? The one thing that kept coming back to me is I have all of these resources and I still am having to work this hard to get the right diagnosis. And that is a problem.
mm.
That's not just a problem for me. That is a problem for other people that I think about when I used to call on these endocrinology offices. I live in Georgia. There's a lot of places that are very remote and rural
Okay.
with no endocrinologist in town, with people that don't speak English as their first language. How many barriers do they have to go through to get the correct
Right.
diagnosis?
Yeah.
So this propelled me then to speak out about it. And also speaking out about it helped me better accept that I had it. I couldn't
Mhm.
run from it, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
I also get that, like, for younger people, and especially for people like before, in the past few years when so many people that don't even have diabetes are wearing CGMs, how it could be at a point where you don't want to talk about it. You don't want people to know. You don't want people to think you can't do this job.
Mm.
And for my diagnosis, I'm in an area where a lot of people are wearing diabetes, or I'm sorry, are wearing continuous glucose monitors for diabetes or not.
Mm.
And I think that that's helping a lot of people be okay with it. I went to my masseuse, and she is not freaked out at all when I wear a continuous glucose monitor or insulin pump, and actually told me I'm her third patient that wears a CGM.
Ah,
And it just made me really see that there's a lot of people wearing some of these medical devices.
sure.
And I think it's helping people break down the barrier to not
Mhm.
be so scared to wear them.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I'm going to add to this conversation because I know that you are on a pump. Can you share what pump you're on?
Oh, certainly. I was trying to think of where it's at. I have to, I keep drinking water. I played pickleball for 2 hours before I got on this call. I came home and took a shower real quick. But here's the thing, we played outdoors and it is over 90 degrees. And my blood
Hmm.
sugar is greatly affected by if I don't have enough water when I'm working
Hmm.
out. So I'm just like trying to
Oh, you're trying to get
drink
it
in between. So my apologies.
in.
I'm
No,
wearing
that's
the,
okay.
I'm wearing the Omnipod 5 with the Dexcom G6 right now.
Oh,
And for
nice.
me personally, one of the things that helped so much was moving to a pump, and it's not cheap on my insurance.
Is it? Oh,
It is
goodness.
not.
Okay.
But for me as a woman, and especially as a middle-aged woman, I had to talk to my doctor about staying in range better. And he even said, listen, For a woman of your age, you're probably going to have to go on a pump to get tighter control for you personally as a woman of your age. He
Mm-hmm.
said, you're doing all of the things you are supposed to do. I can see your logbooks. I know you work out 3 to 5 times a week. I know you're doing all of the right things. You're dosing when you're supposed to. You're giving the correction dose. He said, but hormonally and all of the other things that are going on, it would, for you to get in a tighter range, I would suggest getting on a pump. And that's one of the reasons why I got on it. And the reason why I wanted to make sure I share that is because I talked to a lot of women that their doctors, their endocrinologists have never spoken about how hormones can affect your blood sugar. And for women,
Oh,
hormones
yes.
are like for a lifetime,
Uh-huh.
whether you're pubescent, you have a period, whether you're perimenopausal, whether you're
Mm-hmm.
menopausal. And I thought about that and I'm like, why is that? And now we're
Mm-hmm.
hearing so much more about
Yeah.
menopause. And I think it's also the reality is the majority of endocrinologists or doctors are male. They don't go through it. They don't understand the
Yeah.
full impact, and nor are we hearing now that they're getting immense training when it comes to hormones and menopause. I saw something
Mm-hmm.
the other day that said that the average doctor, and again, this was on, I don't know if you follow Tamsin, who does
I
all the
do.
menopausal.
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
she interviewed for some physicians, and the average time that they were trained on menopause was 1 month. Obviously, that's not a specialist. That's I believe, a
Sure.
primary care doctor.
Right.
But those are the doctors we go to when we're initially having issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make sure that women know, whatever age you're at, that these
Yes.
hormones will affect your blood sugar.
Yes. Amen to that. Because that is, I didn't know it back in the day, obviously, through puberty, pregnancy. No clue,
Even
and
pregnant.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, craziness. It it's the lack of knowing and understanding, and then all that does is add more stress because
Yes.
it's like, what the heck, it's not adding up. And then when I been perimenopause, I shared this a lot here on the show, so I'm sure my listeners aren't tired of hearing it. But yeah, perimenopause is, it can feel like a train wreck, and the sooner we can know how to prepare and expect it, the better. I was lucky. I mean, I studied, the school I studied in, I kind of had the front end, information about it, what to expect, but still there was some navigating that still had to go on. So yeah, and that's just my mission, is just to get the word out about that. Is like, yeah. And like you say, the average doctor, they even gynecologists are not trained in hormones. They're few and far between. So we definitely got to do our homework and advocate and ask for help. And yeah,
Have you
but
seen the diabetes meme where it is a strainer like for spaghetti and it's underneath they have the sink running with the water running and it's a strainer and it's like this is what hormones look
uh,
like with type 1 diabetes. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that so
mm-hmm,
explains it
mm-hmm.
sometimes."
Yeah, yeah.
And I try to have this conversation with my T1D parents or just bring it up. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I just know that this is something with women that, you know, you could literally, like, when people are like, "Oh, I remember I showed a T1D dad actually, who
Mm.
I used to work with, my blood sugar and just said, be prepared for this." And he wrote back and put, "It looks like you've had a pizza." And I'm like, "Nope." I wish that's what it was. And even if I had a pizza, I still could dose for it.
Sure,
It might
sure.
it might bother me for quite some time. I still haven't gotten that pizza
The
dosage.
piece, I don't think any of us have.
No, but
Yeah,
I was like, yes, that's can be what PMS and all these other hormones can be like. And
yeah.
I'd hate for someone to beat themselves up and think that they've done something wrong. I think a lot of people think of, especially type 1, that, I've done something wrong. And a lot of that can be from external sources of people that don't understand it. On LinkedIn the other week, I posted my blood sugar at I'm an actor and I was on set for a commercial. I had eaten a piece of bacon from craft services because it was the lowest carb thing they had on there. And I want to make sure when I'm eating on set that I know the carbs so I can dose properly because I want to stay in range because I get brain
Mm-hmm.
fog sometimes if not.
Mm-hmm.
And my blood sugar was 251 with the arrow going up. And I thought, oh, this is a couple things. Nerves and
Mm-hmm.
excitement always
Mm-hmm.
make my blood sugar go high. I have to be
Yep.
very careful about dosing for that because once it starts crashing, it goes really
Yeah.
bad, really fast.
Yeah.
And
Good
additionally,
point.
there's been sugar on that bacon. Like There
It
definitely
was
was sugar.
sweetened. Yeah, I
All these
know.
things were adding up, but I needed to
Yeah.
be careful with the timing of insulin. And I remember I posted this online, and a T1D man actually said something about he couldn't believe that I would post that, and kind of as a shaming me.
Mm,
And I thought, that's not cool, number
yeah.
one. And
Hmm.
number two, this is coming from another type 1, but it's a type 1 male that doesn't understand how much harder it can be with hormones.
Yeah. 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 Good for you. Yes. Just put it out there. And that's something I admire about you is your matter of fact. This is me, the real you. And I love that. I've seen a lot of your posts and your videos. Speaking of videos, because you have I'll call it a channel. Tell us about your channel that you're doing. Yeah, I don't know all the specifics, but you can share with our listeners.
Certainly. Well, thank you for the kind words. My biggest thing is that I want to make sure that I show real life, because social
Mm,
media can oftentimes be a highlight reel. And the reality with type 1 diabetes is you can do everything right, but diabetes sometimes does what it wants to do. And I'm not going to be
absolutely.
afraid to show that. And my channel is called Hey T1D, and
Mhm.
I am just showing what it's like living with type 1 diabetes, the ups, downs, and the arrows going across. And additionally, with that, I launched two different things. One is called Hey T1D. It's a YouTube channel where I interview medical professionals and ask them questions about type 1 diabetes. I noticed throughout this that many people that I talk to have never been trained if they've been diagnosed as an adult. A lot of them haven't gotten sick day protocol, basics of insulin, how to check for ketones, and doing some of the basics that it comes with type 1 diabetes. And again, I'm
Mhm.
not a physician, but I can ask diabetes educators, dietitians, physicians, those questions. And then
Mhm.
additionally to that, I also started the Dear Diabetes podcast, where I interviewed a variety of different people about diabetes in general. And I'm really learning that it is true about type 1 diabetes. This disease stinks, but the community is
Mm.
amazing.
Isn't it? Isn't it
Hmm.
amazing? Yes. Yes. I was at a football game over the weekend. Go Noles, Florida State. Well, I'm in Florida. I know you're in Georgia. So yeah, my first college football game. And on the way in, it was tailgating going on. And a friend of a friend that I just met her. And then within a few minutes, she noticed I had a CGM on my arm. I wear mine on the arm. And she's like, oh, you're type 1. I'm like, yeah. Well, my husband has type 1 and he was right there. He was behind us. So, and that feeling, it's like, whoa, it's instant. We come together like, oh, another type 1. And it's almost, and I felt like, and it's funny because I was going to share too. I'm getting ready to do a 30-day trial on the Omnipod 5. Waiting for it to come. Actually, it came in the mail. I just got to schedule the appointment with the trainer here coming up soon. I've been MDI since day one.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so it's interesting because what you were talking about with the hormones, I know I'm backtracking a little bit, but that's kind of how we do it around here. It's a conversation. It is starting to get, I'm still doing okay. My A1C is still pretty good. I'm like high fives. But it's taking a little bit more work, and not worry, but just a little more work. So I'm like, well, I think I might just try this thing. So it was nice to again see somebody in person. He had just begun on the Omnipod 5 himself. He was MDI. He was a little bit younger than myself, and diagnosed as a teenager. I just love it. I soak that up. I get a chance to meet and talk with a lot of ladies and men that have been on the show here, living with it. But in person, it's magical, isn't it?
There is something that
Yeah.
when like someone just gets you and you don't have to say anything more. Like
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was really good. It was really good. But yeah, that's just another example of, how connected we are and how much alike we are. And yeah, there's power in that. Yeah. So looking back, what would you say to your pre-diagnosis self?
It's interesting. Somebody asked me this the other week, and
Mm,
I think that I went about it in the right way of constantly going to the doctor and trying to figure out what's wrong with me. But what's changed since me going to the doctor 3 years ago and now is that you can ask to be tested to see if you have the auto antibodies, and not have just someone in your family to be tested for it, because I don't have anybody in my family with it. And
Okay.
I look back and perhaps I would have tried to be a little bit better in my math class. That I would have went even further back because there's a lot of math that comes with type 1 diabetes that I did not know.
Who knew,
There's a lot
right?
of variables. It's A plus B plus C plus da 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 da. Uh,
First thing we
and
learned is 2 + 2 does not equal 4, right?
it does not. It
It
does
just
not.
doesn't.
And I think that we're in a really, if you're going to have type 1 diabetes, nobody wants it. But of all times to have it, there's all this wonderful technology. And I love that there's
Absolutely.
options. But I love now also that, a lot of people would be tested beforehand if you had it in your family. And
Yeah.
now you can be tested for it because there's a medication that can help, extend the full onset of it, which is
Yeah,
exciting. I mean,
it
that's
is.
wonderful. I've met a couple
Mhm.
people that have tried it. I mean, not tried it, that started on it. It's only been however many months. I also
Mhm.
met a couple people that were in the trial for it. And it's very exciting to have that, And I also wanted to share because you talked about the Omnipod 5. I'm not paid by
Yeah,
Omnipod
absolutely.
5, but
Oh,
one of the
no, me
biggest,
either.
but I wanted to share one of the biggest things that I did not know about going to the pump therapy was how much better sleep I was going to get.
That's what
A
I
lot of
hear.
people with diabetes in general get that dawn phenomenon where their blood sugar
Mhm.
starts kicking up. For me, mine is 3 or 4 a.m. that it likes to start kicking up. And
Mhm.
what I did not know is that since I have it on automated mode, it will start bringing down my blood sugar as it goes up. So I'm not waking up with highs. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. And I think, there's so many people that don't understand like what happens, at least for a lot of people. If you've been high all night and you wake up and you've
Mhm.
been at 300 for the past 3 hours,
Mhm.
I feel like I'm terribly hungover. It
Yeah,
is hard to
it is.
shake that and get on with your day.
Mhm.
And then I don't know about you. What do I want to do? I want to drink caffeine to get me started. Well, then
Right.
caffeine can affect your blood sugar. And it's this like constant little
Vicious
circle.
cycle.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so that was one of the biggest things for me is like I finally was able to sleep so much
Yeah.
better, which
Yeah.
is, so I'm very excited for you. And I hope that it
Um,
works well for you.
yeah, and, the my biggest barrier is having it attached to me. I have no problems with the CGM. It's, I've worn them for many, many years. It's and that's why I went tubeless. I didn't want the tubes and the cannulas and all that. I really wanted something that was a little easier and simpler, and that's what I've heard about this particular model. So I'm still thinking about where I'm going to wear it, how I'm going to wear it. I don't know. I'm going to take it one day at a time, just like everything, right?
But I think
Try.
just like now when we were talking about it and you said, what pump do you wear? I had to remember where it was because I don't, it's like your CGM, even though this, like a lot
You
of
do
people are like,
forget.
oh, that's bigger. I still forget where it's at because I don't feel it,
Gotcha.
thankfully, at least the
Yeah.
majority of the time. So I hope that that's the same
It
case
does.
for
It
you.
helps. It does help. It does help for sure. Yes. And it's not like I don't have enough, um, examples around me, using any type of pump. So it's really good motivator. And, sleep is so impactful, like you mentioned. And I was thinking like, because you have a family, and I can imagine how that affects the whole dynamics of the home and everybody sleeping well. I just thought of that. And something you may not know, a lot of my listeners know, but my husband lives with type 1 as well.
Oh,
So
I didn't
yeah,
know that.
yeah, so sometimes we got the alerts going on, all times of the day. It can be a zoo, when it comes to the CGMs and all that. And he's decided to get back on the pump as well. So we're going to go through this together. He was on a pump years ago, but he took a break because he's a surfer in and out of the water a lot. So it didn't make too much sense. So he's going to take that step. So yeah,
That's an
lot of
exciting
change.
time for both of you guys.
I know, right? And then I was thinking the bonus, well, holidays are coming up, so this may be a really good idea. Holidays always tend to kind of get us off track, with those, with just the factors that we can't always control with food. Yeah.
Can I talk about something that one thing I did not know about insulin pumps until I was on
Mm,
one?
mm.
So my first trip on a plane with my insulin pump, I posted something about it, and another guy that I'm friendly with online wrote and said, "How's your Omnipod 5 going to do on that flight?" I didn't know what he meant, and so we wrote back, and then I Googled it, and then I saw that there was a study that it's a published study that's about insulin pumps and how much insulin they can give because of the elevation. It's not that the pump is actually doing something it shouldn't be. It's when you take off, it develops the bubbles and then it releases those air bubbles upon
Oh,
landing. And they call it baggage claim lows because by the
oh
time
my
you get to the
gosh.
baggage claim, you go low. So,
Thank you for telling me that. Oh my gosh.
so it's very
Wow.
interesting. I went and got a mammogram
Yeah.
the other day, and the lady was like, "Well, wouldn't you know if you're not supposed to use a CGM in at a mammogram?" And you're like, "No." Like, luckily, I knew that, and they'd actually are now asking those questions. But you don't. There's so many things to learn when you go into a
Mm-hmm.
doctor's appointment. These are like things that are way down the list. You're
That's
just trying to
true.
make sure you can continue to live.
Yeah.
And so I did not understand this fully. So I made sure that I did a lot of research on it. Well, what happened was that I had this 3 times on a flight where, I even turned my insulin pump on the mode where it doesn't give you any insulin. But that doesn't
Mm,
mean because of the elevation, the altitude, and all
right.
this. Now, this doesn't happen to everybody, but this does happen to me. And now I
Yeah.
take my pod off and like I'm traveling overseas in December and I'm going to switch back for those weeks to be a multiple daily injector
Okay.
because I had a couple scary incidences with that. And
Mm,
just something to think about. And a lot of people had never heard that. And I posted about it and I posted the links and like you can see it on Omnipods, you can see it on all these pumps that it's not something the pump is doing wrong. It's because of the altitude, the
just
pressure, all this stuff. It doesn't
right.
mean you can't wear it.
Right.
You need to be aware of
Gotta
these
be.
things.
Yeah, that's great. That's great information. Yeah, those are things that's not something we've ever mentioned here. So this has all become real for me real soon. Real soon. Awesome.
There's so much to like. I feel
I
like no
know.
matter how much you learn
Variables.
about type 1, it's just like it just keeps coming.
Yeah, it keeps coming for sure, for sure. And so do you have anything coming up, events, projects? If I'm not mistaken, you connected with Breakthrough,
I
Breakthrough
just they,
T1D?
actually I was a panelist. They had a very cool event. Breakthrough T1D actually was with a NASCAR driver. His wife has type 1 diabetes, and they were
Oh,
here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway where they had an event. And I was one of the panelists, and they were also doing testing there for the auto antibodies, and that was very
oh,
cool. And I recently just shot a commercial that should be out soon, and I am continuing away with not continuing away, continuing to
continuing, right?
advocate for type 1 diabetes. I don't know if you saw in the news yesterday that the some of the insulin PBMs, for example, some of the pharmacies will be being sued by the United States for price gouging.
Okay.
It's saying so. Continuing to talk about insulin affordability because it is real, and just because we've gotten these coupon cards does not mean that they won't take those away tomorrow.
That's
And
true.
continue to fight for the affordable price of insulin.
Yes, yes. We got to keep it present, just the our voice and yeah, all of that, for and it's just like you were mentioning before, insurance and that's something that can change, we never know when we might be in that situation where we can't afford the insulin or when it's unavailable or whatever, right? There's so many different variables. So yeah, it's important for us to come and there's a loud voice, loud community. That's when it helps. But yeah, we got to make sure that we're heard and they understand how important it is for sure.
100%. And I just want to say
Yeah.
that, a lot of times people think, oh, that they just lowered this price of insulin. This is because these advocates that have been working
So,
for years on this.
yeah.
I'm new to this. Just in the past few years, there's people that have been working on this for many, many years.
Yeah.
And when people say, how do you get involved? Contact your local congressional member
Mhm.
and ask for them to support affordable insulin because although it was $35 that they signed into law for Medicare for
Mhm.
everyone else, whether you're cash or you have commercial insurance. That is not the case. These
Right.
coupon cards are being given out by these pharmaceutical companies,
Mm.
and there is no guarantee they will be here tomorrow or next year.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. Always got a plan for the what ifs for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And do you have any final thoughts? Or I'm definitely going to link some of your contact information and your channels. Do you have anything that you'd like to share as we say goodbye today with our listeners?
Well, certainly. Well, thank you so much, number one, for what you do in the community. Thank you for inviting me on the show. And
Mm,
the one thing that I would say is be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Whether you are struggling with your numbers being high, what you are struggling with, talk to your physician, talk to those diabetes educators. Do not be afraid to
mhm.
advocate for yourself. You are worth it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate your time and for you being you and to come share your story and all your inspiring words. And appreciate you, Renee.
Well, thank you.
And yes, and like I said, I will link all of Renee's contact information right here in the show notes. Be sure to reach out and you can find her on Instagram, LinkedIn. I know you're over there as well. And we will be back in here same time next week. So have an amazing day.